Check it out. Oh, I said we're gonna get better. We're getting better. I have a microphone now. It's cool. Anyways, let's move on to why you're actually here. Let's have a story. Let's tell a story. So once upon a time, there was, in medieval ancient Japan, a lord by the name of Fujiwara no Yorimichi. Now, he was known as the Lord of Uji, and Uji was a town, I guess. It was kind of an offshoot of the capital city at the time. It was a very nice place, but he was the Lord of Uji. I don't know if that meant he ruled all of Uji, or if he was just a lord in it, but he's known as the Lord of Uji. Regardless, his name's not actually that important. All you need to know is that he's the boss. He's the boss guy of this story. That's pretty much it. But at the height of his splendor, of his power, of his dominance, he would have a monk from a temple called Miidera. Miidera. That's not one E. It's Miidera. I don't know what it means, but there's two E's. Okay, just remember that. But from Miidera, he would have a monk come to his place at night to perform nightly Buddhist rituals. I don't really know what it all involved. Probably lots of praying, probably some chanting, maybe writing down of sutras. I don't know, but he just would have an esteemed monk or an esteemed priest come to his house. I don't know if it was every night, but occasionally on some nights to do Buddhist things, okay? Now, there was specifically one monk that he always hired or requested to come do Buddhist things, and his name was Myozon. That is a name you ought to remember. But one night, Myozon was going about doing his regular things. It was early in the night. He had just started his job, as it were, when the big boss man came to him and basically said, Myozon, hey, I need you to go back to your home temple to do something that the story doesn't mention, because the stories never mention important things like that. But I need you to go back to your temple, and I need you to do some stuff, and then I need you back here before the night is out. So I need you to go there and back again. A Hobbit's Tale, but no. I need you to go there, take care of some stuff, and then come back before the night is over. Now, this trip to Miidera was... To do it in one night was possible, but it's not like Miidera was right there. It wasn't exactly a hop, skip, and a jump away. It was going to take some time to get there. So this was kind of a big deal and kind of a pain in the butt. Because again, it's not technically even in the city. They had to go beyond the limits of the city, and it was just a pain. But anyways, in order to get started, in order to get ready for the journey, Myozon goes with some other guys to the stables, and they specifically look for a horse that doesn't spook very easily, because as somebody who has ridden horses, I can tell you, horses can be somewhat skittish, and the last thing you want is for them to freak out when you're on their back. And especially, this is a problem at night, because that's when predators are active and it's harder to see things. So, for this trip, they are going to need a horse that is not skittish. But, as you will see in some future stories, the capital city wasn't always a peaceful, safe place. And they were heading out of the city. So they were going to need some backup. They were going to need a retinue and some protection. And the big boss guy is sitting there thinking, who would be good to send with Myozon for protection? And he thought of one man in particular, a man by the name of Taira no Munetsune. Now, if any of you are familiar with ancient Japanese history, you will know that the Taira clan was actually a warrior clan. They were kind of badasses. I don't know if I should say that word. They were warriors, down to their bones. They knew how to fight, they knew how to protect, and they were good at it. And so this guy, Taira no Munetsune, was a member of that clan. So obviously, being a member of a warrior clan and probably raised from birth in the art of war, it was a very logical choice. Like, of course you want someone like him to accompany you on your journey. So the big boss guy walks around, looks for Taira no Munetsune, finds him and says, hey, Munetsune, come here. We've got this situation where we need the monk Myozon to go to Miidera and get back all in one night. I'm thinking I would like to send you as part of his security detail. How would you like to do this? And Munetsune just kind of stood at attention, saluted his boss man and said, yes, sir, I understand, sir, and instantly ran right off to his room, where he had stored under the floorboards some traveling shoes, a quiver of arrows, and a bow. So he suited up, got everything on, and by the way, what's very interesting to note is at this time in ancient Japan, the warriors weren't exactly known for using swords. Like, they had swords, but swords was not a marker of a good warrior. Instead, warriors were known for being really, really skilled with a bow and arrow. Like, if you could draw a really heavy bow and you were really, really accurate with an arrow, that was a mark of a good warrior, not swords. Swords would become really big in the Edo period when everybody was relatively at peace, nobody was wearing armor, and people were congregated in really dense cities. In those instances, swords were great, because swords were much better for closer quarters. But at the time, they didn't have huge, dense cities and populations of millions. They had the capital city, and then lots of rural areas that were good for riding horses and shooting bows and arrows. So that's what warriors were known for. So Taira no Munetsune gets all of his riding gear on, gets his bow and a quiver full of arrows, and he brings with him one retainer, one servant footman kind of a guy. And he gets everything together and he immediately goes straight to the stables to go meet Myozon. Now the funny thing was, Myozon knew about this assignment before Munetsune, and he had far fewer preparations that he needed to do. And yet, Munetsune actually beat him to the stables. So Myozon comes walking up, and he sees some dude at the stables just sitting back there kind of shrouded in shadows. And he was not expecting his security detail to get there so soon. So he just sees a couple of dudes standing there, and he has no idea who they are. So he asks them, who goes there? And Munetsune is just standing there all regal and at attention, and he announces himself, I'm Taira no Munetsune, sir, the inspector of the left gate. By the way, that's just a fancy way of saying he was part of the official guard. It was very proper for you to state your position and your rank and your job in ancient Japan. And Myozon was a little bit surprised by this, because again, he was not expecting his security detail to be here already, nor for his security detail to be so like, yes, sir. But another thing that Myozon was a little bit puzzled about, he looked at Munetsune and his servant guy, and he said, don't you guys have horses? Where are your horses? And Munetsune, just like a giga-chad that he is, just says, sir, I do not have a horse yet, but you do not need to fear. We will not be late on account of me not having a horse. But may I request that we depart as soon as possible? So Myozon was like, okay, this guy's kind of a badass. Okay, sure, let's go. So Myozon hands Munetsune a torch, gets on his own horse, and they take off. And they're traveling for, a short while. They get about 800 yards. Nothing's really happening. It's just quiet. It's nighttime. Nothing really out of the ordinary. They're just going. When all of a sudden, out of the darkness, two random dudes start walking towards them. Just come out of nowhere, out of the darkness. And they're walking towards them briskly. And they're wearing black. And they've got bows. And they've got arrows. So naturally, Myozon is like, oh, we're getting robbed. We're getting jumped. They're coming for us. Oh, no, we're so screwed. And there's two of them, but we've only got one actual warrior and his retainer, and I'm no good in a fight. What are we going to do? And he starts freaking out a little bit because he's getting approached by two armed men in black at night. Oh no, this is the worst thing that could happen. This is what we were afraid of. This is why we needed a security detail. But before Myozon could actually have a proper freak out, all of this went through his head. But before he could really start freaking out, these two men approach Munetsune, and they take a knee, and they bow before him, and they say, we have brought your horse for you, my lord. And then they disappeared into the brush and came back out, drawing 3 horses, or 4 horses, a horse for everybody who didn't have a horse, for themselves and Lord Munetsune and his retainer. And they had some actual riding gear for Munetsune, because before I said riding gear, he was actually wearing like travel gear, but now he's wearing riding gear. So Munetsune straps on his riding boots, his riding shoes, his riding footwear, whatever he was wearing. He hitches up his bow, he's got his quivers and stuff with him. He gets on his horse. Everybody is now on horses, and now they all take off together. And other than, we brought your horse for you, my lord, nobody says a single word, not one. And poof, now they're off. And now, in their retinue, they now have 2 more armed men on horses. And now everybody's on horses. So it took a minute for Myozon to realize that they weren't getting jumped, and quite the opposite. They now had more manpower in their retinue. And he's starting to, he finally relaxes and goes, okay, this is good. I don't really know what's going on, but cool, this is great. And they go about another 200 yards or so, when all of a sudden, 2 more men in black appear out of the darkness. Just, there they are. And they're riding horses, and without saying a single word, they just fall in line with everybody else, and the party keeps going forward. And again, Myozon was very confused and stunned in a good way because they didn't say anything. And he's sitting there thinking, who are these men? Well, they've got to be Munetsune's retainers. They have to be. But nobody's saying anything, so he doesn't know. And they go for another 200 yards when another set of 2 men on horses with bows dressed in black pop out of the darkness and fall in with the retinue. And this process happens multiple times. It just keeps repeating itself until they get to the Kamo River, which was kind of like the boundary of the capital. So they get to the Kamo River and they cross it, and they've got a whole retinue of about 30 people now. Just this big group just all going to the temple. Out of nowhere, nobody's saying a word to each other. And needless to say, Myozon was like, I have no idea what's going on. But this is cool. This is great. This is great. We are definitely not going to get jumped now. So they get to the temple. Myozon does whatever Myozon was supposed to do, takes care of things, and they hop right back in formation. This time Myozon is just surrounded by men armed to the teeth and obviously very capable, and they head back for the city. And once they cross the Kamo River, now coming back from where they went, the process that had gone on the whole way they were there started reversing itself. So as soon as they crossed the river, 2 of the men in black riding horses just disappeared off into the darkness. They go another 200 meters. 2 more men just disappear. And they keep going. And again, the process repeats in reverse until they get to the spot where the first 2 men came out. And at this point, the retinue stops. Munetsune and his guy both hop off their horses. Munetsune takes off his riding footwear, hands it to these men in black, and hands the 2 horses over to them. And they all just disappear into the darkness from whence they came. And so Myozon, Taira no Munetsune, and Taira no Munetsune's retainer all make it to the capital, or make it back to the house from when they came, just as they left, just the 3 of them. And so they arrive back at the place, and Myozon is seriously just so confused. Like, he has no... What was going on? Nobody said a word. Where did they come from? How did they know to do this thing? And who are they? What's going on? He's just flabbergasted, and he thinks, I gotta tell the boss about this. He'll want to know. This was amazing. This was incredible. So they had made it back, and it was past midnight at this point, which was a lot sooner than everybody was going to assume. They were thinking that it was going to take more time, but they were able to make some really fast speed because everybody was on horses. It was great. And so Myozon goes looking around for Boss Man, who had been up all night waiting for their return, waiting to hear word from them. And so Myozon finds the Boss Man, and he comes and brings a report about whatever it was he was originally supposed to do at Miidera. But he also tells the Boss Man, Mr. Fujiwara no Yorimichi, sir, Taira no Munetsune is no joke. He's an astonishing man. And he tells him the whole story, the whole process about how all these men who were probably retainers of Munetsune's, but he wasn't sure, they just popped out of the darkness, and they had this huge security detail. It was unlike anything he'd experienced before. And he's telling the boss all of this, and he's excited about it, because this is so weird. This has never happened before. And the whole while, the boss man just kind of listening with nary an expression on his face, just kind of like nodding knowingly, like, okay. And when Myozon was done with the story, the boss man just kind of said, okay, sounds good, and then turned and left. And Myozon was a little put out by this because he was expecting that the boss man was also going to be like, whoa, no way, that's insane, what's going on? I need to ask people about this. And Myozon was hoping that he could get the boss man to ask Munetsune about this, and that he could learn where these men were, where they come from, why they did this, how many times they practiced this, because clearly they had been practicing. Myozon wanted answers. But he wasn't going to get answers from the boss man, apparently. And he never did get answers. The story pretty much ends there, but the last thing that it says is that we do know that Taira no Munetsune's father was also a very stalwart, proper warrior of a man. And also, we know that Munetsune himself was almost beyond parallel in the skills in the bow and arrow. So he was a man's man. Like, he was a warrior. You didn't mess with him. He probably could have taken 2 random dudes that had come out of the darkness if they had tried to jump him. He even got a nickname as the Grand Archer of the Left Gate Inspectors, basically meaning that he was the best archer among everybody in the Imperial Guard. Again, he was a Giga Chad, okay? That's just what he was. So you could translate that, the last part of it, to thus is it said that Taira no Munetsune was a Giga Chad. So anyway, that's actually going to be it. This is actually a much shorter story than the previous ones. A lot of the stories going forth are going to be relatively small, fun little folk tales. And this one wasn't the most entertaining, but trust me, stick around. There are going to be some better ones in the future that will be really, really interesting, shall we say. We'll go with that. But anyways, thank you for taking your time to come and listen again. As you can see, things are going to improve. Hopefully, my storytelling improves as well. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and most importantly, share. Share to all your weeb friends. That would be fantastic. And I hope to see you in the next one. And to sign off, I will tell you thank you in how I translate it in classical Japanese. Ito katejike no koso haberi kere. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next one.